There's a specific kind of self-doubt that can show up after narcissistic abuse. It's not just wondering if you made the right decision. It's deeper than that. You may find yourself questioning what you saw, what you felt, what you meant, what they meant, what actually happened, and whether your reaction was ever accurate in the first place. And when that starts happening often enough, the problem can begin to feel like you. Like your perception is unreliable. Like your judgment is unstable. Like you can't fully trust the way your own mind is reading reality anymore. But losing trust in your perception does not mean your perception was defective. It usually means your perception was repeatedly challenged, overwritten, or made to feel unsafe to rely on. That distinction matters. Because if you believe the problem is that you can't trust yourself, you may keep treating yourself like the source of the confusion. But the confusion often began because your perception was placed under sustained pressure. In a destabilizing relationship, perception rarely collapses all at once. It gets worn down through repeated override. You notice something. You feel something shift. Something doesn't sit right. But then the response you receive makes your perception feel questionable. Maybe you're told you misunderstood. Maybe the tone changes. Maybe the explanation sounds reasonable enough to make you doubt your original read. Maybe the other person seems so certain that your own certainty starts to feel excessive. And over time, your system learns something very specific. Seeing something clearly may not lead to clarity. It may lead to conflict, correction, denial, or emotional consequence. When perception is repeatedly punished or contradicted, self-doubt can become a form of adaptation. Not weakness, adaptation. Your mind begins checking itself before trusting itself, because relying on your own perception no longer feels fully safe. This is why perception can still feel shaky even after the relationship ends. The external pressure may be gone, but the internal habit of questioning your own read can remain. You may catch yourself needing more evidence than you used to. You may replay something obvious, not because it was unclear, but because clarity no longer feels safe enough to stand on. You may look for confirmation before allowing yourself to believe what you already noticed. The issue is not that you stopped perceiving reality. The issue is that your authority to trust what you perceived was gradually weakened. That is a different wound, and it requires a different interpretation. Because if your perception had truly disappeared, there would be nothing to recover. But many survivors were perceiving more than they gave themselves permission to trust. They noticed the shift. They felt the contradiction. They sensed the mismatch. They just learned to place their own perception underneath someone else's version of events. That is not stupidity. That is not instability. That is what happens when your internal reference point has been repeatedly made to feel less reliable than the external explanation. As this becomes clearer, the question can begin to change. Instead of asking, "Why can't I trust myself?" it may be more accurate to recognize, "My perception was trained to defer." That does not solve everything, and it does not mean certainty comes rushing back, but it can soften the self-attack. Because you are no longer looking at chronic self-doubt as proof that something is wrong with you. You are seeing it as the residue of repeated perceptual override. If you're noticing that you can see things more clearly now, but still feel hesitant to fully trust your own perception, I created a 30-day stabilization space as something structured you can step into while you navigate this phase more steadily. You can explore that below if and when it feels appropriate. And if you prefer to stay here and keep orienting at your own pace, that is completely valid. Your perception does not have to feel perfectly certain before it can begin to matter again. For now, it is enough to notice that self-doubt is not the same thing as truth. We'll pause here.